Oh, welcome back, my hidden echoes. No one gave you this power. No manual, no teacher, no quiet hand guiding you through the storm. You forged it from your own silence. You built it from the scars nobody respected, and that's why it unsettles them. Because when you walk into a room, you're not bringing borrowed strength. You're carrying something self-forged, something they can't trace back to a source, something they can't decode. That's why their eyes freeze. That's why their voices stumble. Because your presence isn't rehearsed, it's real. See, most people live rehearsed. They borrow personalities like masks. They mimic strength because they've seen it in movies, heard it in speeches, read it in someone else's book. But not you. You didn't get your fire from a script. You didn't get your patience from a sermon. You didn't get your calm from meditation apps. You carved it the hard way. Through nights where the world forgot you. Through days where your name didn't exist to anyone but yourself. And in that forgetting, in that silence, you built something stronger than applause. You built awareness. That's the power they can't explain. Awareness. The kind that makes your steps feel heavier than the floor can handle. The kind that makes your silence sharper than arguments. When you walk in, it isn't the sound of your voice that commands the room. It's the weight of everything you don't have to say. That's why they freeze, because they realize this truth too late. You're not waiting for permission. You're not performing for approval. You've already mastered the room before you even sit down. So they whisper. They ask, who taught him? Who trained her? Where did they learn this? But the real answer terrifies them. Because you didn't learn it, you became it. And when something is born inside you instead of handed to you, it's untouchable. They can't steal it, can't copy it, can't rewrite it. That's why your presence alone flips the script. You are the variable they didn't calculate, the storm they didn't see on the radar, the gravity that makes every fake mask slide off when you arrive. And the best part, you don't even have to try. The power moves through you like air. Natural, unforced. That's why they freeze. Because in you, they see everything they pretended to be, but never truly were. The room shifts the moment you arrive. You don't announce yourself. You don't need to. The air does it for you. It thickens. It slows. It presses down on every chest, like gravity just doubled. People glance up, pretending they're still focused on their papers, their screens, their little conversations, but their bodies betray them. Shoulders tighten. Laughter dies mid-breath. Someone fiddles with a glass, just to hide the way their hand trembles. That's the kind of power you carry. Invisible, untouchable, but undeniable. You know why? Because energy doesn't lie. Words can lie. Smiles can lie. Titles, ranks, awards, they can all lie. But energy? It tells the truth before your mouth ever opens. And yours screams louder than anything they've ever faced. Not because you force it, not because you walk in trying to dominate. It's because you've done the one thing they're terrified to do. You faced yourself, every corner of your own darkness, every flaw, every mistake, every wound. You looked at it all without flinching. And that's why you terrify them, because they can't even face their own reflection in the mirror without makeup, without excuses, without masks. So when you move, you're not moving like them. You're not dragging chains of insecurity behind you. You're not covering holes in your armor with noise. You're walking light, but heavy, calm, but unshakable. They don't know how to process that, and in their confusion, in their panic, they give themselves away. Their fake confidence cracks. Their rehearsed dominance fades, and all that's left is silence. A silence that belongs to you. That's the real secret. They don't freeze because of what you do. They freeze because of what you don't need to do. You don't beg for space. The space bends to you. You don't fight for attention. Attention is dragged to you like metal to a magnet. You don't seek validation. Validation hides in the corner, praying you won't expose it. That's the difference between you and them. They studied how to look powerful. You endured until you became power. And here's the twist. They'll never admit it. They'll never say out loud. We're intimidated. Instead, they'll cover it with jokes, with backhanded compliments, with whispers behind your back. But don't mistake those whispers for disrespect. Those whispers are confessions. Confessions that they felt it, that they noticed, that no matter how much they deny it. Your presence rewrote the room before the meeting even started. They don't fear your words. Words are predictable. Anyone can raise their voice. Anyone can throw insults across a room. Anyone can lace sentences with fake strength. But silence? Your silence? That's what cuts deepest, because silence doesn't explain. Silence doesn't negotiate. Silence forces them to face themselves, and that is the one battle they've been running from their entire lives. Look at them when you go quiet. The shifting eyes, the nervous laughs, the way someone suddenly clears their throat, trying to fill the void you left hanging in the air. That void is your weapon, because silence creates space, and space demands truth. And truth is the last thing they want exposed. They rely on noise to cover their fear, on chatter to distract from their insecurities, on constant movement to mask the fact that inside they're trembling. But your silence strips all that away. That's why the room freezes, because silence reveals the cracks. It turns their confidence into performance, their authority into costume, their jokes into echoes that fall flat in the heavy air you bring. And deep down, they know it. They know the difference between someone speaking to be heard and someone who doesn't need to speak at all. You're the second one, and that unsettles them more than any outburst ever could. See, silence is not emptiness. It's presence, it's weight, it's proof. Every scar you carry, every betrayal you survived, every storm you weathered, it all lives inside that silence. So when you choose not to speak, it isn't weakness. It's restraint. It's mastery. It's you saying, I don't need to waste words, because the truth already speaks for me. And believe me, they hear it. They feel it in the air pressing against their lungs. They feel it in the tension crawling up their spine. They feel it in the way time seems to stretch, as if the room itself is holding its breath with you. And that's when the whispers start. What is he thinking? What is she planning? Why so quiet? They don't realize the irony. The moment they start asking those questions, you've already won. Because their focus is no longer on their own power. It's on yours. Their fear is no longer of failure. It's of you. And that fear is not created by noise, but by silence. So understand this. When you walk into a room and go quiet, you're not invisible. You're unforgettable. Because silence, in the hands of someone who has mastered it, is louder than thunder. The strange thing is, the room doesn't go back to normal after you leave. It doesn't matter how much they try to reset, how quickly they rush to resume their little conversations, how loudly they laugh to cover the tension. You've already branded the space. The silence you carried doesn't stay behind with you. It follows them. It echoes in their minds like a ghost, and the more they try to ignore it, the louder it becomes. That's the part they'll never admit. They'll act as if nothing happened. But later, alone, it returns. That quiet weight you brought presses on their chest when they try to sleep. That calm power in your eyes flashes back in their memory when they're in the middle of a meeting, trying to sound confident. You're not there, but you are. Your absence becomes louder than their presence. That's the curse of real power. It doesn't need constant display. It lingers, it marks, it haunts. And haunting is exactly what you do. Because when someone witnesses true presence, true calm, true strength, true mastery, they can't unsee it. They measure themselves against it every time. Whether they realize it or not, they replay the moment. Your stillness, your silence, the way the room seemed to shift around you. And every time they replay it, they're forced to face the gap between who they pretend to be and who you already are. That's why they whisper your name in places you've never been. That's why your shadow is heavier than their own reflection. You've become the mirror they can't escape. And the truth reflected back terrifies them. No matter what they build, no matter how loud they scream, No matter how high they climb, they will never match the kind of power that doesn't come from permission, from approval, from borrowed authority. Your presence doesn't end when you step out the door. It stalks them, it unsettles them, it cracks their illusion of control. And the cruelest part, the longer time passes, the sharper it gets, because they realize something devastating. You didn't need them. You didn't need their stage, their spotlight, their validation. You walked in with nothing but yourself, and that was enough to collapse the structure they thought was unshakable. So don't underestimate it. Don't dismiss it. Your power isn't in what you do in the room. It's in how the room remembers you when you're gone. And some of them, they'll never forget. Not because they want to, but because they can't. They look at you now and think it's magic. They think it was some gift, some blessing dropped into your hands overnight. But what they see isn't magic. It's work. It's pain turned into craft. It's a long series of nights when no one believed in you, when even you doubted yourself. Yet you kept moving forward. They don't know about the years where no one noticed, where silence wasn't your weapon yet. It was your prison, where you had to live with the weight of being unseen, unheard, underestimated. But here's the secret. That was the fire. Because when the world ignores you, it gives you two choices: collapse or build. You chose to build, to turn every dismissal into fuel, to turn every rejection into focus, to turn every lonely night into a forge where your mind, your patience, your presence, your silence, all of it, was sharpened. That's why they can't read you, because your story isn't written in applause. It's written in scars. See, anyone can put on the mask of strength when life is easy. But you didn't learn power in comfort. You learned it in the trenches. You learned it when your back was against the wall, when every voice said you couldn't, when the only hand you could rely on was your own. That's where your calm was born, not in peace but in chaos. And that's why your silence hits harder than their shouts, because you've already survived storms that would have broken them. What is their judgment compared to that? What is their whisper compared to nights you faced with nothing but your own willpower? And here's the truth. People sense that. They don't even know why, but they feel it. They feel that your calm isn't surface level. It's rooted. It's unshakable. It comes from surviving what they'd collapse under. That's why the room freezes, because they realize, even if only subconsciously, you've been through more than they can imagine. And yet here you stand, not broken, but sharpened. Not bitter, but aware. Not loud, but undeniable. That evolution, they didn't see it. They only see the result. But that's the part that cuts deepest. Because deep down, they know they would have folded where you stood tall. They would have quit where you pushed forward. They would have begged for mercy where you kept building. That's why they can't explain your aura. It's not something they can copy. It's something you became. So when you walk into the room, it's not just you walking in. It's every moment you survived, every storm you outlasted, every weight you carried that they couldn't even imagine. That's what fills the silence. That's what bends the air. That's what makes them freeze. And you'll see the cracks. The louder they laugh, the more desperate it sounds. The faster they speak, the more they're hiding. The harder they try to fill the air, the more obvious it becomes. They're afraid of the silence you own. Because next to your calm, their confidence looks like a mask that doesn't fit. Next to your presence, their performance looks like a cheap imitation. And once the mask slips, there's no putting it back on. That's the part that destroys them. The comparison. They don't want to admit it, but every room is a mirror, and when you step in, you expose what they've been hiding from themselves. They look at you and realize they've been pretending. Pretending to be fearless, pretending to be in control, pretending to be powerful. But standing next to you, their pretending collapses, because real power doesn't need to perform. It doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to prove itself. Real power exists in silence, in stillness, in restraint. And that's exactly what you embody. It's almost cruel the way it unfolds. You don't move a muscle, and yet their bodies betray them. Their posture weakens. Their eyes dart, their words stumble. And the worst part, they know everyone else in the room can feel it too. They're exposed, unmasked, out of their depth, all because your calm reminded them of everything they're not. And here's the irony. They built their entire identity on noise, on recognition, on being seen, being heard, being validated. Without that, they don't exist. But you built yourself in the dark, in the quiet, without applause, without validation, without anyone holding your hand. That's why you don't need the spotlight. That's why you don't need the noise. That's why you can stand silent while they crumble. Because you don't draw your strength from the outside. You carry it from within. They feel it. They hate it. And yet they can't deny it. Because even as they try to resist, their instincts betray them. They know who has control. Not the one shouting, not the one performing, but the one who doesn't flinch, doesn't move, doesn't need to play the game at all. That's why they freeze when you walk in. Because your calm isn't absence of power, it's proof of it. And the more they try to fight that realization, the more it eats them alive. Every room has one, the so-called unshakable, the loudest voice, the one everyone else looks to when tension rises, the one who pretends they're immune, untouched, above the fear crawling through everyone else's chest. At first they resist you. They smirk. They lean back in their chair. They act like your silence doesn't reach them. But silence has a way of peeling masks, and sooner or later it reaches even them. Watch closely. Their voice doesn't crack all at once. It begins subtle. A pause too long before they answer. A glance that avoids your eyes. A phrase repeated to buy themselves time. They think no one notices, but everyone does. Because the moment the strongest begins to tremble, the illusion collapses for the rest. That's the moment the room shifts entirely. The fake confidence drains out of the air. People stop pretending. No one dares to laugh. No one dares to breathe too loudly. Even the walls feel closer, heavier, as if the building itself is bending to your presence. You've said nothing. You've done nothing. Yet the person they trusted most to hold the mask for all of them cracks. And when they crack, everything else falls. It's dominoes. The whispers stop. The jokes die. The performance ends. Because if the unshakable couldn't stand in your silence, what chance do the rest of them have? And deep down, they know the answer. None. Here's what they'll never admit. It's not your words that broke them. It's the weight of knowing you didn't need words at all. That even in stillness, you carry more power than their loudest outburst. That realization cuts deeper than any argument. Because arguments they can fight, outbursts they can match. But silence they can't touch. Silence they can't win. Silence forces them to stand in the raw truth. And none of them are ready for that. So when the strongest folds, the rest follow. They mask it with excuses, with laughter, with chatter later on. But in that moment, in that heavy silence you brought, every single one of them knew. The balance shifted. The air belonged to you. The room belonged to you. And they belonged to the fear of what you might do next. When the room finally exhales, it's not relief. It's surrender. They won't admit it, but the truth sits heavy in every chest. They've been reprogrammed. That silence you carried, it didn't end when you left. It followed them, into their cars, into their homes, into their restless dreams. At first, they try to shake it off. It's nothing, they tell themselves. Just tension, just coincidence. But deep down, they know. They know they weren't staring at a person. They were staring at a mirror that showed them everything they'd rather bury. And that's the kind of reflection you can't unsee. Listen closely, because this is where power multiplies. Whispers are the currency of control. They talk about you when you're not there. They lower their voices when your name slips out, as if saying it too loudly might invite you back into the room. They build stories around you, legends spun from their own fear. And in trying to explain you away, they only give you more weight, more shadow, more gravity. It's the simplest trick. Say nothing, do nothing, and watch them write entire novels about you in their minds. Every twitch, every pause, Every glance they replay endlessly. What did it mean? Why didn't you speak? Why did the air collapse the moment you walked in? These questions haunt them, and the haunting becomes obsession. And obsession? That's where dominance is born. Because obsession keeps them chained to you even when you're gone. It forces them to study your silence like scripture, as if decoding it might save them from the unease crawling through their skin. But there is no code, no secret formula. There's only you, unreadable, unshaken, untouchable. They think power is about noise, about shouting commands, about filling the space with words. But you showed them the opposite. That real power doesn't need to shout. It doesn't even need to move. It only needs to exist. And when it exists in silence, it spreads like smoke. Invisible, yet suffocating. And here's the final cruelty. They'll never recover. That silence will sit in the back of their minds forever, reminding them of the moment the entire room, their entire facade, bent to you. They'll try to rebuild, but the cracks are permanent. Because once silence proves louder than all their voices combined, they can never look at themselves, or you, the same again. The room was only the beginning. Because whispers don't stay in corners, they leak. They slip under doors, ride on tongues, scatter like sparks in dry grass. And soon what started as a silence in one chamber spreads into a silence that follows you everywhere. Everywhere you go, eyes sharpen, conversations stutter. People sense it before they even understand it. The gravity, they can't explain it, but they feel it in their bones. And once felt, it can't be ignored. That's the paradox of your presence. No one teaches it, no one explains it, but everyone responds. Instinctively, like prey, recognizing the shadow of a predator it's never seen before. And that's why the world freezes. Not because of what you said, not because of what you did, but because of what they cannot define. And what people cannot define, they fear. Fear becomes obsession. Obsession becomes respect. Respect becomes silence. And silence, that's your crown. But here's the twist. You never asked for it. You never begged for the throne, never demanded the stage. You just walked, and the world rearranged itself around you. And that is why it terrifies them most. Because power that isn't earned through noise, through begging, through games, it cannot be touched. It cannot be toppled. It simply is. So they call you what they can't control. They whisper names, stories, labels. They try to reduce you to something human, something they can file away in their categories. But nothing sticks, because what you carry isn't written in books. It isn't taught in schools. It isn't copied from the weak, pretending to be strong. It was forged in silence, polished by storms, hardened in nights no one saw you survive. And now, it's undeniable. Remember this, the power they call mystery is just you being real in a world addicted to masks. The aura they fear isn't magic, it's discipline, and the silence they can't stand. That's the truth, cold, sharp, merciless. You didn't come to play their game. You came to end it. And now the story is closed. Their voices may echo, their stories may twist, but every time your name is spoken, one thing will always remain: the silence